All right, so today we're going to dig into a pretty provocative argument, one that really challenges the way a lot of modern politics is done. The big idea? That focusing on identity and historical grievances might not just be outdated, but it could actually be a losing strategy. We're going to break down this proposed shift from what the source calls a race war to a class war.
Yeah, the source material we're looking at today, it does not pull any punches. It kicks off with this really blunt statement. And what it's basically saying is that the main conflict, the real fight in politics, has changed. The argument is that the battle lines aren't really about race anymore, but about economics. And if you miss that, you're going to have some major problems.
Okay, so that brings us to the core idea here. The whole argument is that we're in a totally new political era, right? The old strategies, especially the ones built around historical grievances in America, are supposedly just not working anymore because, well, the world and the voters have changed.
And wow, this source is super direct about this. It argues that the whole strategy of identity politics has been kind of hijacked and watered down, so much so that it's now useless for the very people it was supposed to help in the first place. The claim is that it's been exploited and it just doesn't deliver real results anymore.
Okay, so if the old way of doing things is failing, you gotta ask, right? Why? Well, the source really zeroes in on this idea that a message about one group's exclusive struggle just doesn't connect in the world we live in today. And to explain this, the commentator uses this really powerful metaphor. They call it the struggle license. The idea is that this so-called license, which maybe once gave a specific group a unique claim to suffering, has basically expired. And why? Because let's face it, economic pain is something a lot of people are feeling now. And this is where the argument really gets down to brass tacks. The source points out that it doesn't matter if you're in a rural white community, a Hispanic neighborhood, or the inner city. Financial struggle is the thing that connects them. The shared experience isn't race. It's that they're all struggling to get by. And this quote, man, it just gets right to the heart of it. The argument is simple. When almost everyone is feeling the pressure financially, a political message that's focused only on the unique hardship of one group, well, it's just not going to resonate with everyone else. So to make this idea feel a little less, abstract, the source points to a real-world example, the political defeat of Jasmine Crockett. She's used as a case study for how this old, identity-focused playbook supposedly just didn't work out in the real world. So the critique really boils down to this. The campaign was seen as all performance and no actual policy. The focus, according to the source, was on getting into arguments, having moments go viral, what the source literally calls finessing propaganda, instead of actually laying out concrete plans for the people she wanted to represent. So, according to the source's breakdown, this all-performance, no-policy approach created a certain image in the public's mind, an image that the source, pretty controversially, describes as loud, cantankerous, difficult, which it argues ended up turning off the broader base of voters she needed to win. And so, what was the result of all this? Well, here's what the source claims. It says that Latino voters were a huge factor in her defeat because they looked at her message and just didn't feel like she was talking to them or their interests. It's basically held up as Exhibit A for what happens when you don't build that broad coalition you need to actually win. Okay, so after laying out the problem and pointing to a real-world example, the source then pivots. It starts talking about the solution, proposing a really fundamental shift away from this race war way of thinking and towards something completely different. And this, right here, this is basically the new rallying cry. The argument is that the main conflict in America needs to be reframed entirely. It's not a fight between different races, it's a struggle between different economic classes. So here you can really see the two different game plans laid out right next to each other. On one side, you have the race war framework, which the source paints as divisive, backward-looking, and focused on grievance. And on the other, you have the proposed class war framework, which is presented as being about inclusion, building coalitions, and focusing on economic benefits for everybody. The core idea, the whole engine behind this new strategy, is this concept of universalism. It's all about creating policies and messages that are very clearly designed to help all Americans, trying to unite people across every line you can think of through their shared economic interests. But look, this proposed shift, it isn't just some philosophical theory. The source argues it's actually based on some cold, hard, pragmatic math and the reality of demographics. And that brings the whole argument down to a really basic, almost mathematical question. If your whole strategy is built to appeal to a group that's a minority of the population, how do you ever actually get enough votes to win?
13%. According to the source, this is the number that turns coalition building from a nice idea into a mathematical necessity. The argument is that a strategy focused exclusively on one group, which makes up about 13% of the population, simply doesn't have the numbers to win elections by itself.
So, what does this new playbook actually look like in practice? Well, the source breaks it down into these 4 key steps. It's a pretty clear roadmap, moving away from an exclusive message and toward a platform of universal solutions, one that's designed to build a big tent and win over people from all walks of life.
And this last quote, I think it just perfectly nails the central challenge here. It's a call to show and prove. It's not about talk anymore. It's about tangible results. The new playbook isn't about who you are, but about what you can deliver. And, as the source makes crystal clear, you have to deliver for everybody.
So, all of this leaves us with this one huge critical question that's really at the heart of the whole debate. Is building a broad economic coalition the smart, pragmatic way forward in today's world? Or does focusing on what we all share economically mean you risk ignoring or even erasing the very real, very unique struggles that different communities have faced and still face today? That's really the big dilemma to think about.